It all started with a dare. "Come on, man. Don't be a coward," Marcus said, flashing that stupid crooked grin of his. The others laughed, the sound sharp in the cool night air. The old hospital loomed behind them, a black crumbling monolith at the edge of town where streetlights dared not reach. It had been abandoned for decades, left to rot and sink into urban legends, stories of missing people, strange lights, and whispers in the halls. I should have said no. Instead, I laughed along, trying to hide the knot of unease tightening in my stomach. I adjusted the straps on my backpack, feeling the comforting bulk of my flashlight inside. "Fine," I said. "Let's get this over with." The path leading up to the hospital was barely visible, just a cracked concrete sidewalk choked with weeds. Every few steps, we had to dodge broken glass, rusted metal, and twisted remnants of old hospital equipment that seemed to claw at our legs. The closer we got, the worse it smelled. Damp wood, mold, and something faintly metallic, like old blood that had never quite washed away. Marcus was the first to reach the front entrance, a pair of massive double doors hanging half off their hinges. He gave one a playful shove, and it creaked inward with a drawn-out wail that seemed way too loud in the silence around us. I hesitated at the threshold. It wasn't fear exactly, more like my instincts screaming that I was making a mistake I wouldn't be able to undo. The others pushed ahead, their laughter echoing off the walls and into the yawning darkness beyond. I flicked on my flashlight and stepped inside. Immediately, the temperature dropped. It was like walking into a tomb. My breath fogged in front of me, and the beam of my flashlight cut a narrow tunnel through the black, revealing broken tiles, shattered glass, and graffiti scrawled across crumbling walls. Some of the tags were just random symbols, but others, they looked older, almost ritualistic, drawn in looping, desperate lines. "God, it stinks in here," Lily muttered, covering her nose with the sleeve of her jacket. "Better get used to it," Marcus said, grinning. "We're staying at least an hour." An hour, that was the deal. Stay inside for 1 hour without running out, and you earned bragging rights for life. Fail, and you'd never live it down. High school rules, even though most of us had already graduated. I think we all felt like we had something to prove. To each other, or maybe just to ourselves. We moved deeper into the lobby. Bits of the ceiling had collapsed, leaving piles of debris everywhere. Rusted wheelchairs lay overturned like the remains of some ancient battle. A faded reception sign dangled from one corner, swinging ever so slightly as if moved by an unseen hand. The silence was thick, oppressive. Every footstep, every whisper felt like a violation, like we were waking something that preferred to be left alone. I kept close to the others, but my eyes kept straying to the shadows. Every creak of the building settling made my heart jump. I told myself it was just an old building, just stories, just the dark playing tricks. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. We reached a corridor leading deeper into the hospital. It stretched out before us, long and straight, the darkness swallowing everything beyond the reach of our lights. Along the walls, doors to examination rooms and offices stood ajar, some barely hanging onto their hinges. Above us, water stains spread across the ceiling like the branching veins of a corpse. Halfway down the corridor, something moved. I caught it out of the corner of my eye, a flash of white disappearing around a corner. I stopped in my tracks, my breath catching, Did you see that? I whispered. The others turned, their faces illuminated by their flashlights. See what? Marcus asked. There was. I shook my head. Maybe it was a curtain, or a rat, or something else. Nothing. Forget it. They laughed it off, but I noticed Lily sticking a little closer to me after that. We pressed on. The corridor opened into what must have been the waiting area. Rows of tattered chairs sat facing a wall of cracked, grime-coated windows. The outside world looked impossibly far away, like we had crossed into another reality the moment we stepped through those doors. Let's split up, Marcus said suddenly, a wicked glint in his eye. Cover more ground. You're insane, Lily said immediately. No way. I'll go with you, Jake offered, clapping Marcus on the back. That left Lily and me. I wasn't thrilled about splitting up, but at least I wasn't alone. We agreed to meet back in the waiting area in 30 minutes. As Marcus and Jake disappeared down one hallway, their flashlight beams bobbing like fireflies, Lily and I took the opposite corridor. The deeper we went, the worse the smell became. Thick, choking, cloying. How can a place even smell like this after all these years? Lily whispered. I didn't answer. I was too busy listening. Somewhere ahead, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I raised my flashlight, scanning the hall. Nothing. Just endless decay and darkness. Lily grabbed my arm. We should go back. I nodded, but as we turned around, we heard it again. Closer this time. And for the first time that night, I realized something that made my blood run cold. The footsteps weren't coming from ahead. They were coming from behind us. I spun around, flashlight jerking wildly in my hand. The beam slicing through the dense, suffocating dark. Nothing. Just the long, empty corridor, stretching back the way we had come. Cracked floor tiles gleaming under the weak light, but the sound had been real. I knew it. Lily clutched my arm tighter, her nails digging into my jacket. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Our ears strained against the silence, waiting. Then we heard it again. Slow, dragging footsteps. And this time, it wasn't faint. It was close. Too close. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might drown out every other noise. I grabbed Lily's hand. Come on, I whispered. We moved fast, retracing our steps down the corridor, weaving around debris and broken gurneys. The corridor twisted to the right, opening into a large, shadow-choked room. Maybe it had once been a nurse's station or supply area. It was impossible to tell now. Rusted filing cabinets stood tipped over, their drawers yanked open like gaping mouths. Papers littered the floor, brittle and yellowed with age. We ducked behind an overturned desk, trying to catch our breath. I dared a glance back at the corridor we'd just left. It was empty, but there was something wrong. I couldn't say what at first. Then it hit me. The darkness. It wasn't just the absence of light. It looked thicker somehow, denser, as if something unseen was filling up the hallway, swallowing the edges of reality itself. And it was creeping toward us. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to be my imagination. When I opened them, the blackness had inched closer. I could feel it now, like cold fingers brushing against my skin. A loud clang made me jump. Lily had accidentally knocked over a metal clipboard from the desk. The noise echoed like a gunshot in the silence. And that's when we heard the voice. Faint, raspy, calling from the darkness. Come here. Lily whimpered, backing up against the desk, her eyes wide with terror. I tightened my grip on her wrist. We have to move, I hissed. Keeping low, we slipped through a broken side door into another hallway. This one was narrower, the ceiling sagging dangerously overhead. The floor was damp, slick with something that smelled like rot. I tried not to think about it. Every few feet, my flashlight flickered, the beam sputtering as if struggling against the oppressive atmosphere. I tapped it with the palm of my hand, muttering curses under my breath. The hallway ended at a heavy, rusted metal door. A faded sign above it read, "Operating Theater." The paint was peeling so badly it was barely legible. Behind us, the dragging footsteps returned, faster now, and definitely closer. No choice. I shoved the door with my shoulder. It groaned open with a scream of tortured hinges, and we stumbled inside. The operating theater was vast, circular, and steeped in shadow. Rows of cracked leather seats rose up around a central operating table that looked more like an altar than a medical instrument. Massive surgical lights hung from the ceiling, swinging gently even though there was no breeze. The air stank of chemicals, rust, and something worse, something that made my stomach turn. I swept the room with my flashlight, the beam trembling in my hand. Every surface was covered in dust and grime, but it wasn't untouched. Fresh footprints tracked across the filth on the floor, leading from the entrance to the operating table, and then vanishing into thin air. Lily was shaking her head frantically. "This is wrong. This is all wrong." I didn't disagree. We crept toward the operating table, my boots crunching softly over broken glass and discarded surgical tools. A set of restraints hung from the sides of the table, frayed and stained with something dark. My light caught something carved into the metal surface. Words, shaky, desperate. "Don't look at it." "What the hell does that mean?" Lily whispered. Before I could answer, the surgical lights above us flickered. Once, twice. Then flared to life, bathing the entire room in a sickly yellow glow. We weren't alone. Standing in the far corner of the theater, half hidden behind a curtain of shadow, was a figure. It was tall, thin, dressed in what looked like a tattered hospital gown. Its head was bowed, arms dangling limply at its sides. For a heartbeat, it didn't move. Neither did we. I barely breathed. Then, its head snapped up. I only caught a glimpse, a flash of hollow black bits where eyes should have been, a mouth torn into a ragged, permanent scream, before I wrenched my gaze away, remembering the words carved into the table. "Don't look at it." I squeezed my eyes shut, grabbing Lily by the arm. "Don't look! Don't look at it," I hissed, dragging her backward. The thing let out a sound then, something between a sob and a wet gurgle, and the lights overhead began to flicker violently. We stumbled toward the door, but it slammed shut with a deafening bang before we could reach it. Trapped, no way out. The floor beneath us began to vibrate, the entire room pulsing like a living thing. From every corner of the theater, whispers rose up, a chorus of hissing voices that clawed at the edges of my mind. They were saying my name. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears. Lily was sobbing, her voice barely audible over the cacophony. Through it all, I could hear the shuffling steps of the figure moving closer, dragging itself across the floor. Closer. Closer. I forced my eyes open just a crack. The room was blurring, spinning, the lights overhead bursting one by one with sharp pops. Glass rained down around us, glittering like broken stars. In the chaos, I saw another door, small, hidden behind a torn curtain on the far side of the room. "That way," I shouted, hauling Lily to her feet. We ran, half blinded by the flashing lights and the disorienting, shrieking whispers. My shoulder slammed into the curtain, tearing it down in a shower of dust and mold, revealing the door. It wasn't locked. We burst through into another corridor, slamming the door behind us. For a second, there was silence. Pure, beautiful silence. I leaned against the wall, gasping for air, sweat pouring down my face. Lily slid to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, still trembling. Neither of us said a word. We both knew it wasn't over, not even close. The corridor we had escaped into was narrower than the others, and somehow colder. The walls were slick with condensation, and the air tasted metallic, like blood. Every step we took echoed down the hallway, making it impossible to tell if we were alone. But I knew we weren't. Something was pacing us, staying just out of sight. I could feel it like a splinter under my skin. The flashlight in my hand sputtered again. I slapped it hard, and it flared back to life, revealing faded signage on the walls. Psychiatric wing. Of course, I should have known. Lily tugged at my sleeve, her voice a broken whisper. "We have to get out of here. Please ... I nodded, scanning for any sign of an exit. There were doors along the hallway, most hanging open, leading into tiny decrepit rooms. Some still had beds bolted to the floor, leather straps dangling from the sides. We moved fast, trying not to look too closely. But as we passed one room, I caught a glimpse of something that made my blood run cold. A figure, sitting cross-legged in the center of the floor. I stopped, heart hammering against my ribs. It was a girl. Young, maybe 10 or 11. Her hair hung in tangled clumps over her face, and she wore a hospital gown stained with something dark and crusted. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, rocking back and forth slowly. Before I could move, she turned her head toward me. Even through the darkness and grime, I could see her eyes. Hollow, black, endless. She smiled. The walls around us seemed to pulse, the paint bubbling and peeling, as if recoiling from her presence. I grabbed Lily's hand and ran. We tore down the corridor, not daring to look back. The whispers returned louder this time, and I realized with a sick twist of fear that they weren't random anymore. They were chanting, words I didn't understand, words that didn't sound human. The corridor ended at a set of swinging doors. I slammed through them, barely registering the faded letters stenciled on the cracked glass. Intensive treatment area. The room beyond was massive, filled with rusted hospital beds, arranged in perfect, unnatural rows. Chains dangled from the ceiling, swaying even though there was no breeze. The air was heavier here, suffocating. Each breath felt like inhaling tar. And then the lights flickered, and I saw them, dozens of figures. They lined the walls and filled the beds, motionless at first, patients, or what was left of them. Their bodies were gaunt and twisted, faces hidden behind bandages stained yellow and brown. And as the last light overhead blinked and died, they moved, not all at once. Small jerky movements, fingers twitching, heads turning, ever so slightly, toward us. I stumbled backward, dragging Lily with me. "Don't move," I whispered. "Don't make a sound." We froze, barely breathing, hearts slamming against our ribs. For a moment, nothing happened. Just the wet shuffle of bandaged limbs and the groan of ancient springs as bodies shifted in their beds. Then one of them sat up fully. Its head lolled unnaturally to one side, as if its neck couldn't support the weight. It opened its mouth, but instead of words, a long, gurgling moan spilled out, low and desperate. That was all it took. The others followed. One by one, the figures began rising, their movements frantic now, chaotic. Some crawled over the beds. Some dragged broken legs behind them, all of them coming straight for us. I spun around, searching desperately for another way out. Across the room, barely visible in the gloom, was an elevator. It probably didn't work. Hell, it could drop us straight into hell for all I knew. But it was our only chance. We sprinted, weaving between the beds, the bandaged patients reaching out with clawed hands, their fingers grazing our clothes, our skin. I slammed my palm against the elevator call button. Nothing. No light. No ding. Just dead silence. The shuffling bodies were closing in. Closer. Closer. I hit the button again. Again, a flicker. A low grinding hum. The elevator was coming, but not fast enough. One of the patients grabbed Lily's arm. She screamed, trying to yank free, but its grip was iron. Without thinking, I swung the flashlight, smashing it into the figure's head. It collapsed backward, limbs flailing like a puppet with cut strings. But others were almost on top of us. The elevator door slid open, just enough for us to squeeze through. I punched the button inside, any button, all of them, desperate. The doors began to close, but a pale, bandaged hand shot through the gap. I kicked it, hard. The hand withdrew with a wet snap, and the door slammed shut. The elevator shuddered violently, and then began to descend. I collapsed against the wall, panting, heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. Lily slid to the floor, trailing her arm where the figure had grabbed her. Red marks already blossomed across her skin. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of the elevator groaning as it carried us deeper into the bowels of the hospital. "I don't want to be here anymore," Lily whispered, her voice cracking. "I know," I said, "I don't either." But somehow, deep inside, I knew it wasn't over. We hadn't escaped, not yet. The elevator jolted to a stop, the lights inside flickering wildly. The doors creaked open, revealing a hallway unlike anything we had seen so far. It was pristine, spotless. The walls gleamed a sickly shade of pale green, and the fluorescent lights overhead buzzed steadily. It looked new, but it didn't feel right. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, because standing at the end of the hallway, motionless and waiting, was another figure, taller, more solid. Its face was a blur, shifting and writhing, as if it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. And it was staring straight at us. The lights flickered once, and when they came back on, the figure was gone. But the elevator behind us slammed shut, trapping us in the corridor with it. Lily clutched my hand, trembling. I squeezed back, forcing my legs to move, to carry us forward, even though every step felt like a step towards something worse, towards something we weren't meant to find, something that was waiting for us. The hallway stretched ahead like a never-ending nightmare, its walls closing in with every step I took. My heart thundered in my chest as I pulled Lily along, her breathing shallow, her hand trembling in mine. The eerie silence was only broken by the occasional drip of water echoing from somewhere deep within the hospital. The figure was gone. At least that's what I thought, but the unease gnawed at my every sense. The feeling of being watched, of something just beyond sight, clawing at my thoughts, was unbearable. "Stay close," I whispered, my voice tight. "We're almost there. We have to find a way out." Lily nodded, her face pale, her lips trembling, as she stared at the dark corners of the hallway, unwilling to meet my gaze. We came to another set of doors. This one, unlike the others, was ajar, just wide enough for us to slip through. Without thinking, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. It was a stairwell. A glimmer of hope flared inside me, bright and fleeting. Stairs led up. Stairs meant an exit. At least, that's what I told myself. The flickering overhead lights seemed to beckon us forward. We could escape. We had to. I grabbed Lily's hand again, dragging her with me up the rusted stairs. The air thick with dust and stale, moldy smells. The steps groaned beneath us, as if protesting our presence. The entire structure of the hospital creaking as though it were waking from a long slumber. Every creak, every groan made my skin crawl. And then I heard it. A low guttural sound. It came from behind us, from the stairwell below. I froze. The noise was growing louder. Something, or someone, was coming up after us,